We are really honored to have Norma Alvarez today with us. Norma is an advocate of the Bombay High Court and an activist and campaigner on social and environmental issues. For the past 25 years, Ms. Alvarez has argued entirely free of cost around 200 public interest litigation cases in the Bombay High Court, the National Green Tribunal, and in the Supreme Court on environmental issues, human rights, women's equality, animal welfare for Goa's NGOs and citizens groups. She has been appointed amicus curiae, meaning friend of the court, by the High Court in several petitions. She's a member of the High Court Legal Services Committee, which ensures free legal aid to the weaker sections of society. Ms. Alvarez is also a well-known animal welfare activist. She's the president and founder trustee of People for Animals Goa, which has established several animal shelters in Goa to assist the authorities to control stray dog population and provide relief to injured animals. For her publicly acknowledged work in relation to the protection of the environment, women's empowerment, and animal welfare, she has received several accolades, including the Padma Shri from the Government of India in 2002 and the Yasha Damini Puraskar from the Government of Goa in 2003. So without further ado, please welcome Norma. Over to you, Norma. Oh, could you unmute yourself? Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so hello everybody. I can't see you all because I'm on my phone, which does not admit for too many spaces. And talking via Zoom is so different from talking to an audience who you can see and whose reactions you can see. But this format is the best thing we can do in these days, and we must accept it in that manner for the time being. Ellie has given you an introduction to me. One thing that I forgot to say in my note to her was that I am also the chairperson of the Federation of India's Animal Protection Organizations, which is one of its kind in India. It was founded about a decade ago. I was a founder trustee. I am a founder trustee. And for the past 6 years, I have been the chairperson of this organization. We have a large number of member organizations. We are loosely bound as a federation. There are not too many strict rules. Every organization continues to do what it does, but adheres to the general principle that in numbers we find strength. And if we are urging the government to make changes to animal welfare, then it is the number of organizations who bind themselves together which can pressurize the government. I say this particularly in the context of the topic at hand, which is the efforts of People for Animals Goa to stop bullfights in the state of Goa. We achieved what we wanted by law, but sadly, we are still struggling to ensure its total enforcement, compliance with the law, because in a certain sense, there are not too many pressures on the government, which I see at the moment. I will talk about this a little bit later in the session. But first, something about PFA. PFA, which is the short form for People for Animals, was set up in 1996. Just a handful of us who cared about street dogs primarily, who were concerned about a very cruel practice of shooting dogs and cutting off their tails to claim money for the act of removal of stray dogs, a barbaric practice instituted at the time when Goa was still a colony of Portugal. They were ruling Goa for 450 years. And because there were large numbers of dogs, the Portuguese government had this incentive: um, shoot the dog, bring its tail, count the number of tails that you brought, and we will give you X amount of money per tail. So, in the process, not only stray dogs got shot, but also pet dogs. Well, that's not the real difference whether you're stray or you're pet. You don't just get shot at for being around, for being alive. Unfortunately, that practice had continued even after Goa's liberation. And you used to have dog shooters who would walk around with guns on the road, not any armed insurgents, but to show their availability to colonies, households, anyone who had what they would call a stray dog menace. And then you could contact them, and then they would say, okay, we'll negotiate, I don't know, a deal, I guess. So it was because of this practice that some of us felt it was really heartless and inhumane to simply shoot animals on the street in full view of public, children, people, whatever. And that's how People for Animals was founded. Well, we were founded, and our main depot or our main office was in the capital city of Panaji, where there were a large number of wounded dogs moving around, people treating them like lepers. Oh, look at that dog, it looks so horrible. You know, wounded dogs tend to come towards you because they are sort of asking for help. And people think that, oh, this dog is terrible, it will attack us, and so on. And that's how People for Animals was founded. We initially started with one shelter, then we got another one, and then we got a third shelter. Today we run two shelters, essentially for small animals, dogs, cats, injured animals, and so on. We also handle cattle, but we don't keep them permanently because we don't have a big place. So they are sent to a goshala, an animal shelter which looks after cattle. That's what we call it in India, goshala, a home, a stay home for cattle. And we send them over there. Well, our involvement in bullfights was entirely accidental. We are not set up to prevent bullfights. We had really nothing to do with cattle when we started, and it was totally accidental, which I will come to in a moment. But first, let me explain to you some history about bullfights. How did such an occurrence, bullfight, that is very simply as you understand, two animals fighting against each other, head butting, which is how bulls fight. They butt each other head to head, and each one tries to dominate the other. How did this happen in Goa only? Because Goa is the only place which has this so-called tradition of bullfights. Well, there are two explanations. One is that after the harvest, Goa has a large number of fields. We are a largely rural, semi-rural area. We have a few towns. We are a state. Goa as a state. There are a few towns, about 5 or 6 towns, not even as large as cities, Bombay city or Delhi, whatever might have seen, or Tokyo, much less than, US, the New York, and so on. They're very small towns. And linked to them are villages. And the villages, unlike many parts of India, are relatively affluent places. They have houses and gardens, and behind the residential setup are the fields, because Goa is largely agricultural domain. Now, after the monsoons, when you have the rice fields are all harvested and the rice crop is taken, the stubble remains in the fields. And then the animals are let out, because most families used to harbor, used to keep some cattle in order to plow the fields. So once the rice is harvested, they leave the animals loose to go and forage in the fields and get some kind of a straw, the leftover rice, whatever's in the fields. And of course, in the natural course of things, you would find two bulls fighting each other. Now, what do animals fight each other for? They don't fight for a crown. They don't fight to win a race. They never fight to show who's the best. They don't have such objectives. They fight maybe for food. If you have, say, a lion who has made a kill, well, he will not let anybody else come near until he has eaten, and then he will allow his family to eat. So animals will fight over a kill. They will fight to get the kill. They will try to outmaneuver each other in order to get food. They also fight if they want to mate. So you see it with birds, you see it with chickens, you see it with dogs, you see it everywhere. You see it with humans also. Animals will fight for a partner. They have to woo the partner, and it's the male who has the task or the pleasant task of attracting the female. And the females turn their noses up at most of them and finally select one, and then the mating occurs. And sometimes they remain lifelong partners, as in the case of geese and a few other animals, but very often the male moves on after his job is done. And the female then, if she gets pregnant, she delivers and nurses and so on. The cycle continues. So these are the reasons why animals fight. But the animals would fight in the fields, maybe for couldn't be for food because there was no great food around, maybe for a partner, maybe, but also could have been a playful fight, a headbutting, which is something that you see young boys do when they are playing around. They fight each other in play. So it could be that. Perhaps this was one of the inspirations for watching bullfights, because when a bullfight would occur, people would gather around and they would say, oh, I think that one's stronger. Oh, I think this one will win. And soon it went into betting, because betting is a natural kind of inclination of men, at least, who want to put money and get money quick. So there would be a kind of betting that would occur unofficially, informally, as to which animal will win. I remember when I came to Goa, I used to live in the city of Mumbai earlier. But when we came to Goa in the 70s, we used to see bullfights, but they were now and then, usually after a church feast, after a village feast. You've had your fill, you've eaten well. What will you do in the afternoon? So then there would be a bullfight in the field behind the village settlement. And the local people would gather and they would go around and they would watch a bullfight. I guess they would bet there as well, and so on. So this was the origin, one of the origins. The second thing is that Goa being a Portuguese colony, and perhaps this is the reason, as you know, in Spain and Portugal, they have these huge bullfights. But the bullfights there are a bull engaging with a human who is baiting it. The red rag, I'm sure you've seen that, and the Spanish, the bull going for the guy and he jumping out of the way, and so on and so forth. There are so many movies which show the bullfights happening. So Spain and Portugal, two Mediterranean countries, have got this tradition of bullfights, and perhaps the Portuguese encouraged it. But they never managed to have a bullfight as in Portugal and Spain, where the bull was engaged with a human being. It just simply remained at the level of two bulls. This is its origin. As I said, initially, it was a sport with obviously cruelty would be there. Very often the bull would run away. Everyone would laugh at the bull and laugh at the bull owner, saying that, oh, your animal is a scary thing. It's just run off like that without a fight. What is the use? Hopeless and so on. But it was on a low scale. In course of time, this low scale increased. The betting began to be more. The bullfights began to be more organized when certain people found that this is a good way of making money, providing entertainment, and there are lots of viewers. So bullfights began to be held on a large scale, as in they would take a huge field. There would be an advertisement. The name of the animal would be announced like King Kong versus Tarzan or whatever, these names that are all macho kind of names. Um, Bruce Lee versus somebody else, and they would be given names, and people would gather because there was advertisements in the paper. The even people like the chief minister, the governor would be chief guests at these functions. It became so much a part in the last 10 years, say 1970s, 80s, it became a part of Goan sort of, I don't like to use the word culture, but Goan practice to have bullfights on a weekend, Saturday, Sunday, people all going to watch a bullfight. And the prizes became larger. There were official prizes, but what drove the bullfights was always the gambling and the betting. There were injuries caused to people sometimes because the bulls would run out of the run amok, get out, and would run into a crowd, and people would get injured. One person even died. And that is what was part of the provocative action for us filing a case. And but people didn't seem to mind. There was a thrill, there was a high, there was a pleasure in this kind of thing of watching two animals fight. And the animals also began to be trained because now the owners did not want to leave it to chance. So there was training. I will read you a portion of the petition which tells you how it was, how the animals were trained. But the selection of the animal would always be that of the owner, which is that there would be every person had a herd of cattle, male, female. The watching the nature of the male, which one was more aggressive, which was more was stronger, which was larger, mightier, that animal would not be castrated. Otherwise, they would castrate the bull because you don't want the bull to go on mating and you have too many calves and their strength goes down. That's what they say. And you cannot handle these things. So animals would be, the males would be castrated, but the one who was earmarked for a bullfight would not be castrated. And that would be the animal targeted for the fight. How did we get into bullfights? As I told you, somewhere in September 96, one person died of a bullfight. That alarmed us, some of us, me in fact, and I began to feel that this is not right, that you have this kind of thing. And I had been seeing regularly the announcements in the paper. What was worse was that a big, huge, mega bullfight event was planned for 2nd of October. Now, 2nd of October is a sort of sacred day. It's a day we revere Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the Indian nation. And Mahatma Gandhi stood for non-violence, for peace, for non-violence, which is no violence. And on this day, they were going to have, there was an announcement of a big bullfighting event of about 6 or 7 bullfights. One of them even belonging to the ex-chief minister of Goa. And there was a huge, drama around this big event. And that is what provoked PFA to file a petition. We filed the petition in the High Court, probably at the end of September, maybe 28, 29. We asked for urgently the matter to be taken up. And when the matter was taken up, the court immediately, we showed the law, which I will go through with you. We showed the law, and the court said, well, this is an out and out violation of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, which explicitly prohibits organizing a fight between two animals. As simple as that. You cannot organize a fight between two animals. Two animals may fight. You may watch. You may gamble, I guess, if you want. But you cannot organize a fight between two animals because you are compelling the animals to do an act which is at that moment in time, at least, against their will. If animals fight on their own, as I told you, they may be fighting for food, that is their wish. If they fight for a partner, that is their wish. But if you put them into a situation and you insist that they fight, it is not the wish of the animals. And you want an outcome to that fight, which means you are going to provoke them to continue the fight. The court, in fact, asked me, court said, but why only, we asked that the bullfight not to be held on the 2nd of October, 1996, saying that this was Ahimsa Day. And the court turned around and said, but why only 2nd of October? If something is wrong, it's wrong. There's no question of allowing it on the 3rd of October. We were delighted. Of course, we agreed immediately, and we got an overnight ban, so to speak, what we call a on the holding of bullfights. It shocked Goa. Overnight, the court said, stop bullfights. But what the court did was, it fixed the matter for a proper hearing 2 months later in December. And before that, it asked us to join the people who were affected by the bullfights, that is the bull owners. So we joined an organization called the All Goa Bull Owners Association, and they became parties to this petition. And besides them, there was the government of Goa, PFA. At that time, there was no state board for animal welfare. We didn't have a state board, so we didn't join. And I think the central government was a party. And the court heard the subject of whether bullfights are a violation of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. And if so, why should they not be stopped? Now, let me read to you first what is a bullfight. And I'm reading it to you from the judgment itself. Page 16. Okay. Are you following me so far, I guess? Can I see any hands saying yes or no? I guess you are there and fine. Okay. So what is a bullfight? What happens in a bullfight? I'm reading you from the judgment delivered on bullfights, wherein the court first describes what is the event that we are challenging. The undisputed facts which are brought out in this petition disclose that a bullfight consists of a fight between two bulls or two buffaloes, or a bull and a buffalo. Such fights are organized in an open field, and the same is witnessed by a crowd of spectators which spread all around the arena or the ground where such fights are arranged. The organizers of the bullfights collect fees from the spectators to witness such bullfights. The crowd of spectators can range anywhere between 500 to 5,000, depending upon the bulls and the buffaloes arranged for such fights. So for instance, if they are well-known bulls, which people recognize the names, Tyson, or Tarzan or whatever, and they know that this bull puts up a good fight, then there will be more people who will come for the fight. Very much like a boxing match and so on. But remember that in a boxing match or in any kind of wrestling which involves physical violence, human beings consent to that. They agree to that fight because they want the prize money. Bulls don't agree to a fight. They don't get any prize money, and there's no consent taken from them for a fight. So the crowd ranges anywhere between 500 to 5,000, depending upon the bulls and buffaloes arranged for such fights. The bulls or buffaloes are specially maintained for such fights by some people in the state of Goa. The fight begins when two bulls or buffaloes, specially trained and bred for the fight, are brought against each other with their owner or their trainer standing behind them, goading them on. At regular intervals, either mud is rubbed on the back of the animals or water is poured on its back. That is partly a kind of just as you massage somebody to stir up its muscles and get it sort of moving, but also they say it's a kind of shock. Suddenly, in the middle of something, cold water's on you, you are angered. So you are also trying to draw out anger against the other animal. This is done either to agitate or to cool down the animal as the need may arise. So if you want to cool down the animal, you rub mud. If you want to agitate it, you pour water and agitate it. In the process of such fight, the animals are goaded and incited, not only by the owners or trainers who stand behind such bulls, but almost the entire crowd participating in inciting the animals to fight. They are shouting, they are yelling their name. There's a huge noise and a pandemonium. Animals are naturally agitated by people shouting around them. Before the actual fight begins, the bulls, with their eyes turned red, glare at each other and sometimes try to scare their opponent by skiting their horns in the ground, flinging mud up into the air. Then suddenly they dash at each other, locking horns, pushing each other. They move back and forth intermittently, charging and retreating. It all depends on the strength of the bull and its stamina. Pushing each other, sometimes they even try their force on the spectators while the crowd scrambles for safety. The bull that gets pushed out of the arena first or turns and runs away loses a fight. One fight could go on for as long as an hour or get over within 2 or 3 minutes. On some occasions, the bull runs away from the field without even locking horns. In the process, the animals suffer injuries. Sometimes the owners will cut the animal with a small blade in order to draw pain and persuade it to pursue the fight. At times, the bull can get bored and have to be put down, put to sleep. Normally, the defeated animal runs away from the field, even with the victor chasing it. And on such occasions, it can run towards the spectators, causing injuries to them. Considering these facts, we wonder how anybody can say that there's no cruelty involved in conducting bullfights. In brief, the bullfight involves a fight between two bulls or buffaloes without any restrictions to be observed in such fights and without any control of human being as regards the nature of the fight which can take place between such bulls. And in the result, the animals are injured. At times, they can go insane, and they can also inflict injuries to the spectators of the fights. Bullfights have gained popularity in recent years solely because of betting that goes with it. People bet huge amounts of money, earning quite a packet from these fights sometimes. This is one of the social evils that is brought in by these fights, which are not mere fun. These bullfights, which are organized without any restrictions, is because neither the owner nor the trainer can keep full control as regards the nature of the fight. It is also seen that during the fight, the animals get insane and injured and end up inflicting injuries to human beings, and has sometimes resulted in the death of a person or persons. These bullfights, though initially were organized as mere fun, are now associated with gambling and betting, a commercial business at the cost of cruelty to animals as well as occasionally to human beings. So this is, I've given you a fair picture of what the bullfights is. Now today, bullfights still occur, and I will come to that. But what does the law say about bullfights? The law that is relevant is the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960. Now this act, the objectives of it are very, very, just a one-line objective, which is an act to prevent the infliction of unnecessary pain or suffering on animals, and for the purpose to amend the law relating to the prevention of cruelty to animals, and then is the act. The act deals with all kinds of animals. It deals with all kinds of issues concerning animals, that is dogs, cattle, and experimentation on animals, and so on. Chapter 3 of the Act deals with cruelty to animals. It is a sort of, it enumerates the various forms of cruelty, and it says, it's section 11, which says, if any person beats, kicks, overrides, or otherwise treats an animal to subject it to unnecessary pain or suffering, or being the owner, permits an animal to be so treated, and organizes acts in the management of any place for animal fighting for the purpose of baiting an animal or getting them to engage in a fight, this is punishable. May I have the slide which is on section 11, the first slide in the lot?
Sure, thank you, Norma. Charles will put that up right now. Just to warn our audience, on the first slide, there is an image of two bulls fighting. There's no blood involved. It's just to show how the bullfights look like. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So you can see here the crowd standing at a safe distance, and you can see the two bulls kicking up mud, so to speak. You can see a couple of people near them. They will be the owners or the trainers. This is one of the most harmless pictures of bullfights. The bullfights really have blood running down the faces of the animals, and they are gasping and so on and so forth. But the organizers of this workshop did not want any gory images, so there's a safe one for you. I will read you in the meantime section 11, which is about cruelty. As I said, if any person beats, kicks, overrides, overdrives, overloads, tortures, or otherwise treats any animal so as to subject it to unnecessary pain or suffering, or cause, or being the owner permits the animal to be so treated. Or then it goes into B, C, D, all the various ways in which you can be cruel to animal, chases an animal without ties it for a long time, and so on. But section N is important. Section M, sorry, M and N. Solely with a view to providing entertainment, confines or causes an animal to be confined. And number 2, incites any animal to fight or bait another animal, or organizes, keeps, uses, or acts in the management of any place for animal fighting, or for the purpose of baiting an animal, or permits or offers any place to be so used, or receives money for the admission of any person into any place kept or used for such purpose, and so on. Then, if this happens, he shall be punishable. In the case of the first offense, with a fine which shall be not less than 10 rupees, but may extend to 50 rupees. And in the case of the second or subsequent offense, committed within 3 years of the previous offense, a fine not less than 25 rupees, but may extend to 100 rupees, or with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 months, or with both. Now, this is section 11 of the Act. It is based on section 11(1)(a) and section 11(m) and (n) that we went to court saying that you cannot organize a fight between two animals. You cannot give your place for a fight between two animals, two or more animals, and you cannot organize a fight, and you cannot permit a fight between two animals. This is the law. But as you can see, the penalties, I am ashamed to say, are not worth even talking about. Now, this is an act which was notified in 1960, at a time when 10 rupees perhaps meant something. Today, $1 is 100 rupees. So 10 rupees is, I suppose, 10 pence or 10 cents, sorry. What is 100 rupees penalty for a fight wherein you can earn in lakhs and crores of rupees? So what happens is that people don't care about violating the law. They don't bother. Nobody gets imprisoned. They rather pay the penalty. Second offense, third offense, as many offenses. And the police also feel, what is the point of us struggling around to get these cases registered, take them to the court, prove that this man committed the offense, when all that can be levied upon them is 10 rupees or 50 rupees or 100 rupees or 1,000 rupees. It just does not make any sense. And for years, animal activists like us and animal organizations have been pleading with the government to raise the penalties. Because unless the penalties are raised, it means you don't care about how the animals are treated at all. And that is one of the objectives of the Federation of Indian Animal Protection Organizations, of which I am the chairperson, to push government, to lobby with government, to increase the penalties, to revise the act. In fact, we have an act already ready, the Animal Protection Act. We do not want a negative sounding act, prevention of cruelty to animals. We want a positive act, Animal Protection Act, which can be passed by Parliament and where the penalties will be more realistic and more in keeping with today's time. Now, besides section 11, there are other things that can be done, which is section 20. Section 20, for example, says that section 20, section 20 is the penalties, but chapter 6 gives other powers. For example, you can seize an animal. If an animal is involved in something which is cruel to it, then the court has got powers to seize the animal and give it some better protection. There are also powers of search. If you know that there is an animal which is being treated cruelly, you can invoke the powers to go and search the animal, locate the animal and confiscate it. The problem with bulls is that they are huge animals. They are also not aggressive by nature, but made aggressive. We're talking about the animals which are involved in bullfights. They are made aggressive by training because they are taken for walks, they are given particular food, they are kept in isolation for long hours, so that deprived of companionship, they become like, like prisoners in a cell. If you keep a person in solitary for a long time, they go mad in their own heads. So to handle such an animal is not as simple as handling a dog, handling a chicken, handling a goat, handling a cow, which are all much more tame, or which are, or whose strength is not so much that you cannot deal with it. So the problem is, while you have powers of seizure, the question is, who will seize? The owner will not help you. So how do the police seize the animals? How do they confiscate them? And if they do confiscate them, where do they take them to? And how do they maintain them? These are problems associated with enforcing this Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act in all its several provisions which are made available. Nonetheless, we went with our petition in 1996, October 1996, and we got a judgment. We made a prayer for interim relief, which, as I told you, we got on the very same day. The court said stop it and posted the matter for final hearing. Then we joined the Bull Owners Association and we joined the government. Now, I want to know from Ellie, should I go on just now, or have I reached a point where I should stop? Because I need to go into what were the responses of government and so on. What should I do at this point?
Sure, thank you, Norma. So let's maybe do a breakout room now, and then we can come back to the second part of your talk. Is that okay?
All right.
Great. Thank you so much, Norma, for such insightful talk. I'm sure everyone has been finding it very insightful. I've learned a lot already.
Please find out from them if they are following me properly and whether everything is clear and so on. Anyway, I take your word.
Thank you. Yes, if you have any comments, questions for Norma, please type away in chat. And okay, so it's time for breakout room session. So the question is, reflecting on what Norma has been saying so far, let's think about if we have sports or entertainment industry in our countries and regions that exploit animals as well. So the topic is, are there any sports or entertainment that exploit animals in your region? Are there any similarities or differences in history or legal protection or how animals are treated to what Norma has explained so far about bullfights?
Hi. So from a group, first we spoke about rooster fighting. So in both Spain and in Thailand, so Joaquin and me, right? We just have there is a culture in rooster fighting, and there is also as well as in we just talked a bit about in Indonesia. There's also incident where there was a rooster fight and they used knives to put in the chicken, so it provokes them to kill another chicken, which makes it more violent. And then we were talking about, Joaquin talked more about in Spain, there's a lot of competition and races for like with a horse as well as dogs and is it greyhounds, right, Joaquin, right? And yeah, that's also it's not on traditional ground or but more like on because of gambling. People want to bet for fun. And yes, and for, let's see what else we talked about. And yeah, and we talked a bit of why people did that, and like I was wondering if like there are only some regions who do this, or if it's a widespread, like in the cities or something. And like Joaquin said, it's not about like, It's more about people trying to have fun. So there was no like, there was no, it was not about tradition like in bullfighting. Sorry, I'm going around and around. And yeah, that's like basically what we got. Is there something anybody wants to add in our group?
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you very much for sharing that. It sounds like we've got similar issues everywhere, basically, unfortunately. So let's invite a spokesperson from room 2. Could you raise your hand using the reaction feature? We had Asta, Carla, and Soha in room 2. Thank you, Carla. Let's unmute her.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry, my camera, I turned it off for the meantime, or else it will be, the network is lagging on my end. So in our discussion, I think that the most common for all of us in group 2 is the cockfighting. So it's very common in our countries. Me, for example, I am from the Philippines. Soha is from Pakistan, and Asta is from India. And we all have the same observation when it comes to using animals as entertainment and gambling, which is cockfighting one is an example. In my country, we also have underground pit bull fights that we are trying to stop. And I shared that in 2010 we were able to rescue at least 100 wounded pit bulls during one raid to an establishment that doing that. And in Pakistan, it was mentioned by Soha that there's also monkeys used as entertainment, beer baiting, which is actually declining, but still it's being done in our country. And it's a very struggling thing because um, Soha, for example, is from Karachi, which is one of the largest city in the world, but there's only one animal shelter that's doing the advocacy for stopping those thing. And then also from Asta, which is from India, just like what Norma mentioned earlier, they're also having the same issues like the Jallikattu. It's already banned, but they're still being practiced, and um, the animal advocates are trying to stop this kind of entertainment. So what I've observed also from our discussion is that it's really hard to get help from the government when it comes to um, asking them to implement the law to stop and to prosecute those people who are doing these things to animals, making them as a source of entertainment and using them for betting and gambling. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Carla, for sharing that. Okay, let's move on to room 3. Spokesperson for room 3, please raise your hand. We had Bharati, Meena, Poppy, Sirjana, Vio. Please raise your hand using the raise hand reaction feature. Thank you. Can you unmute yourself, Bharati?
Am I audible?
Yes.
Hi. Okay. So sorry, our room forgot to appoint a spokesperson, so I'm sort of appointing myself the spokesperson. So we had in our room Sirjana and myself from India. We had Poppy and we had Barilita from Indonesia. We had Meena from Japan. And we talked about, am I missing anyone else out? I hope not. Okay, I think I've got everyone. And we talked about the various, we talked very briefly about the bullfighting, and we talked about dog fighting, which is happening in parts of northern India. We talked about cockfighting, which is there in several other countries in South Asia. And then we moved on. And I think the 2 or 3 points that came up in discussion were Poppy was not Poppy, Violeta was mentioning how difficult it is to get a ban, even though it's banned by law. It's because people present it as tradition. It's very difficult to take on some of these issues when they become part of tradition. And we also talked about animals in circuses, and because their animals are used for entertainment and sometimes again pitted against one another. And then Meena from Japan, Meena was on a train, so she was texting, she was typing in, and she was talking about the dolphin hunting, which is very, very common. And dolphin hunting also seemed to be very common in Indonesia. And so we were, Sirchana was sharing about how in India they planned to start dolphinariums, and Kiapo managed to stop that. And finally, I think we talked briefly about cockfighting. Have I missed anything else? I'm sorry, I didn't take notes because I was not supposed to be the spokesperson. But since I've appointed myself that, so please feel free to add. Thanks, Poppy. Thanks, Vailita.
Thank you so much, Bharati, for sharing that. Sounds like you've had a very fruitful discussion. Okay, let's move on to the last group, the room 4. Please, could you raise your hand if you were the spokesperson for room 4? We had Angel, Fajar, Kaho, and Denise. Denise, thank you. Let's unmute.
Yeah. So I think for our group, we discussed in the context of Indonesia, Hong Kong, Japan, and Singapore. Yeah, so I think some of the things that we talk about has also already been mentioned by the other group. So let me just try to be more summarized. So I think we did list talk about items, like a whole range of items, from more bloody things like dolphin hunting, cockfights, shrimp or squid fishing, to even like seemingly innocent and happy things like zoos, animal parks, and horse carriages, and even like monkey parades. So I think we also talk about like some of our feelings towards these things, and how many people don't really realize the irony, or that something's wrong when they actually engage in this entertainment as things that they do with their families, or sometimes even when these things are considered tradition. So I think yeah, it's just there are many of these things amongst us, and I think sometimes you just need to realize, be more aware of what is going on. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Denise. I could hear that 2 of you have shared a similar story about issue of even more complexity of having these animal cruelty entertainment called as tradition. That would add another layer of complexity in solving these issues. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your discussion. So Norma, let's move on to the second part of your talk, please. It's over to you.
Okay. So I've been listening to, you can hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
So I've been, what's happened to my mic?
We can hear you.
Okay. So I am now listening to your discussion. I think what follows in my talk will be of use to you. I want to tell you first what were the reactions of the respondents, as we call them, to the petition. What were the arguments they brought up? And there were 2 main parties. One was the government, and the other was the Bull Owners Association. That is the persons who are affected, who are organizing the bullfights, who are conducting them, and so on. Now, the government had 2 main objections and responses. One is they said that the holding a bullfight does not necessarily mean cruelty. Suppose you hold a fight and no animal is injured, what is the problem? Then it is not a cruelty. That is one argument. Second argument they said was that we are wrong to come and ask the court to issue a direction to the government to take action to ban bullfights, because the act says that organizing fights is an offense. So we must take each offense, because there are punishments for it. We have to take each offense and file a case against each offense. You cannot come to the court and say, please see that you ban bullfights, because they are individual offenses. Now, to this, our reply was that organizing a fight is prohibited. The very fact that you make two animals fight each other is a cruelty as per the law. You cannot say that I don't see the cruelty in it, because you are not in the mind of the animal. The animal does not know why it is made to fight somebody, another animal with whom it has got nothing to do. It has no relationship. It doesn't know the animal. You just tell it, go and fight. It's like, the Roman arenas, and you put two people together, the slaves, and you fight. They have nothing against each other. But as I said, in the case of humans, you know why you're fighting. But in the case of animals, they are simply forced to fight. So this won't work. And the second argument, that each offense you have to file a case against, it's a pointless exercise, because first of all, look at the penalties. The penalties are so low. Second thing is, how are we going to go around filing cases against every offense? Should not the government be proactive when you know that this is happening? Should you not be proactive to see that when you know there is a fight, you go and round up the people, stop it in some manner, declare it illegal. Don't go and preside over the function. The chief minister is a chief guest, the governor is a chief guest. That shows you approve of the whole function. So these were our arguments. The bull owners had a different tack. They took a different tack. Number one is, they said, oh, this is a customary practice. It's been going on in Goa for so long. This is our custom. This is our way of entertaining ourselves. It's a harmless activity. Two animals are fighting. What is a great big deal about it? Secondly, they said a bullfight is not a fight, actually. It's a trial of strength. Two bulls are butting each other to see which fellow is stronger. So it's a trial of strength. It's not a fight. They don't know about fighting each other. Second argument. Third argument was that it's something very natural. We are not telling the bulls to stand on a stool like they make elephants stand on a stool in a circus. We are not telling them to go upside down. We are not telling them to hang in the air. This is what they do normally. We're just around it. We are organizing something. So it's a very natural act of the animals. Then fourthly, they raised the argument that these animals are very well looked after. We feed them, and they gave the diet. We feed them ghee and butter and almonds and I don't know what not, good quantity of rice, and we feed them properly. We rub them down every day. We take them for walks. We bring them back. We put oil on them. We look after them. They are very, very dear to us in the family. And last argument, if I can say, is that they said it is an economic activity. There are so many families who rear these animals for the bullfights, and they're very much dependent on it. And if you suddenly take it away like this, then you are depriving people of their income. Now, to these arguments, we gave the examples that there are many customs, like there was the custom of sati in India, where the wife would throw herself, so to speak, on the funeral pyre of her husband when he died, and she would die along with him, some kind of an inverse Romeo and Juliet or whatever. Many times the wife didn't want to die, but the relatives would throw her into the fire. So this was a practice known as sati, and this was custom, but it was stopped. What about the way blacks were treated in the USA? Slavery, at one time custom, but then outlawed. What about women's right to vote? At one time, women were property. Today, they have every right. So custom is not an answer to everything. And if there are bad customs, well, they should be stopped, because custom is something that people get used to over time. And If the law does not permit it, then you cannot have a custom which prevails over the law which prevents. All the other arguments, well, it's an entertainment for people. Well, you cannot entertain yourselves at the cost of animals. What about the fact that animals are well looked after? Well, you may look after somebody very well so that the person becomes a lifelong slave or serf of you. That is not permitted. The animal has a right to existence. What about the fact that we are engaging the animals in an activity which it is natural to it? Well, it is natural to it when it is natural to it, not when you decide it is a fight should be organized, and so on. As a compromise, the bull owners said, okay, we'll put barricades around the arena to prevent accidents to the spectators. But the court said, well, that is taking care of the spectators. What about taking care of the animals? Well, we are concerned that spectators get injured, but this petition is about the animals. So putting barricades will protect the people, but it doesn't protect the animals. And the court in its judgment made several observations. And can I have, one of the observations was that the animals have a right to live without cruelty. And this is the reason for protection by law. 20 years later, in a well-known case, Nagaraja versus the State Animal Welfare Board of India, the Supreme Court said the same thing. Can I have that slide which has the Nagaraja judgment? Just a quote from it, which you can take a look at.
Sure, 1 second. Charles, if you could put that up, that would be great.
And get ready with slide 3 also. Just do slide 2 for a moment. So when we look at the rights of animals from the national and international perspective, what emerges is that every species has an inherent right to live and shall be protected by law, subject to the exception provided out of necessity. That is food, for example. Animals also have honor and dignity, which cannot be arbitrarily deprived of, and its rights and privacy have to be respected and protected from unlawful acts. This is a quote from a judgment 20 years down the line. But in the PFA judgment, the court said the same thing, that animals have a right to live without cruelty and to be protected by law. The court also said that if something is prohibited by law, it ought not to be done. Can I have slide 3? Okay, you can look at what is written there. I put a small quote, but I will quote you the entire paragraph. It says that it is this case of Indian Council for Enviro-Legal Action versus the Union of India, when the court said that enactment of a law but tolerating its infringement is worse than not enacting a law at all. The continued infringement of law over a period of time is made possible by adoption of such means which are best known to the violators of law. Continued tolerance of such violations of law not only renders legal provisions nugatory, but such tolerance by the enforcement authorities encourages lawlessness and the adoption of means which cannot or ought not to be tolerated in any civilized society. Law should not be meant only for the law-abiding, but it is meant to be obeyed by all for whom it has been enacted. A law is usually enacted because the legislature feels that it is necessary. And therefore, when a law is enacted containing some provisions which prohibit certain types of activities, then it is of the utmost importance that such legal provisions are effectively enforced. If a law is enacted, but it is not being voluntarily obeyed, then it has to be enforced. Otherwise, infringement of law, which is actively or passively condoned for personal gain, will be encouraged, which will in turn lead to a lawless society. So basically, the sum and substance of this is that when there is a law saying that organizing animal fights is an act of cruelty, well, then you don't organize animal fights. As simple as that. You don't try to justify it on this or that ground. You observe the law. Because otherwise, in other spheres also, people will say laws are not meant to be enforced. We can do what we like. Nothing happens to us. So this is the reason why the court then passed its directions where it called for a meaningful implementation of the act. Paragraph, it said that if this act has got to be, if this act is to mean something, then there must be a meaningful interpretation, which is that you have to observe the act in all its aspects, and what is prohibited must be prohibited. Then the court also said that animals have an equal claim for a right to life without cruelty. This is what I was saying to you in the first slide, where the court said, and I'm trying to locate the paragraph, it says that it cannot be disputed that all animals are born with an equal claim for life without any cruelty to them. Perhaps if this right was given proper recognition by human beings, there would have been no necessity to bring on the statute book the said act. Unfortunately, even though the act has been brought into force, there still appears to be either lack of courage or willful negligence on the part of the respondents to implement the provisions of the act, and therefore, in our considered opinion, the People for Animals is justified in making a grievance about the same. The respondents cannot shirk their responsibilities to prevent the cruelty to animals. In fact, to prevent such cruelty to animals, it is obligatory upon the government to take action under various provisions contained in the said act. Thirdly, the court recognized that there is a failure of government to enforce the law, that government has done nothing. In fact, government has patronized the enforcement by attending those functions. It has not filed a single case. It has not done anything. There has been a total failure. And finally, the court concluded with a declaration which said that the petition succeeds. Bullfights are in contravention of the provisions of the said act and are therefore illegal and cannot be permitted to be organized. The respondents, that was the government and the police, were therefore directed to take immediate steps to ban all types of animal fights, So the court widened the petition, all types of animal fights, including bullfights in the state of Goa, and to see to it that the direction is fully complied with in letter and in spirit, which the act seeks to achieve. The court also quoted from the Quran, and the sentence which it read, the sentence from the Quran it read is, "There is not an animal on the earth, nor a flying creature on two wings, but they are people like unto you." I think this encompasses all religions, because the Hindus believe in reincarnation, and the Quran also says that there is not any animal, but it is a person like you. It is you. Don't treat an animal as something which is below you, because it's just another person which is moving on this earth. So we got this judgment. The bull owners appealed the order, and the Supreme Court dismissed it. What was the reaction in Goa? Amazingly, there was widespread support for the ban, which came in the media from educated class, from women, from professionals. In fact, I got the Woman of the Year award that year for championing this cause. There was total hostility from the bull owners, of course. They also threatened me. They threatened to bring all the bulls from all over Goa and dump them in my house or in my garden and ask me to feed them, because they could no longer feed them. So the government even offered me police protection. I told them, please don't send any police to my house. I will call you if any bulls reach my home. Nothing really happened. Advertisements stopped immediately. And in due course, the bullfights came down. But government was not proactive in enforcing the court's directions. They just began to say, okay, there are less bullfights. So bullfights began to be organized surreptitiously, quietly, without advertisements. Till today, there are no advertisements. Nobody advertises it. But now there are new forms of advertising through social media. There are Facebooks which are created. There are Instagram accounts which are there. And there is a network of people who join these things and who are informed at short notice when a bullfight is happening. Sometimes they get advance notice also. And in recent times, in COVID, during the COVID times, there were a lot of people who returned home from overseas because their jobs, they lost their jobs, and they were back in Goa and no job, looking for a quick means to make some money. Nobody on the streets, lockdowns enforced, no police bothering about anything. So entertainment in the village began to gain ground, which is why we went back to the court in a contempt petition. But there was a contempt petition filed by us in the year 2008 for the first time, when we found that bullfights were being held early morning, in the early morning hours, and nothing was happening. We took it to the court, and the court asked the government what it was doing, and the government, gave a list of some few cases they had filed, because our main problem really is the penalties. Even the police tell us that it's such a waste of our time. We catch a guy, we have to take so long to get to prove that he was the person. It's very difficult. And then he gets off with a penalty of 100 rupees. What is the point of this all? Better we catch some other crooks. So that is what happened. But in the first contempt that we filed, can you put the contempt, the next slide? The court took note of the fact that there were not adequate staff deputed, and the court recorded that the respondent shall depute adequate staff at the police station in whose jurisdictions bullfights are being organized. And it's a duty of the government to also protect those officers, because that is what came out, that officers go to the site, but there are thousands of people, 2 officers, 2 bulls who are fighting. There are the owners, there are the trainers. What is the officer to do? If he goes into the arena, he will probably get a knock from the bull, and people will be entertained by that instead. It's humiliating for the officer. So they try to chase away the crowd. But can 2 officers chase away a crowd of 5,000 people or 1,000 people or 500 people? Nobody will listen. They've got some batons in their hands. They don't have guns. I'm not asking that they have guns, but it's very difficult. So the court said put enough officers, and that was it. It closed the contempt petition, saying that look, government is trying and they will put adequate officers. Well, it stopped again for some time. And then again, we went to the court a second time in a second contempt petition in 2016. And give me the next slide. And therein the court said, the court recorded that the government is going to publish a prohibitory order and will issue show cause notices and will take action, and they will charge sheet the people who have indulged in the bullfights and so on. And the court again accepted the statement of the government and said and disposed of the contempt petition. But now we have gone back to the court again, saying that look, every 8 years or every 10 years, this bullfight starts again, and government is still not taking enough of action. So we are now in court with a contempt petition filed in the year 2021. We have given the court all the list of the sites where bullfights are happening. We have told the court, given the court the list of the places where they are being organized. We have given pictures. We have told the court how this is happening. And I must say one thing, which is that when Jallikattu, which is referred to by one of the groups, Jallikattu is a kind of engagement of bulls with peoples. It is not a bulls fighting each other. So very strictly and very technically, it is not a bullfight, because the two animals are not the two animals. In fact, there are a number of animals. They don't fight each other. The Jallikattu is where the animals are made to run through a gauntlet, so to speak. They run through a kind of a closed, barricaded place, and human beings, young men, try to jump on them and overpower them. In the course of it, the bulls toss them off. They are thrown off. Sometimes the next bull tramples them. Sometimes they scamper to safety, and so on. So it is not even like the Spanish bullfights. It's not exactly that. It is some version. It is also a post-harvest kind of entertainment. And Jallikattu went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court banned it. Then the state government passed an amendment to a local law and has been allowing Jallikattu to happen under certain watchful eyes, so to speak, of the Animal Welfare Board of India and so on. The challenge still lies in the Supreme Court in this matter. And because Jallikattu was allowed again by the state government, the bullfight enthusiasts in Goa got a sort of fillip, and they began to say, if Jallikattu can be allowed, why can bullfights not be allowed? The politicians began to get into the act, because for them it is votes. They want the votes of young people. And so the politicians began to make noises also that, well, if you elect us into power, then we will allow bullfights. We will amend the law. But you cannot amend a central law at a state level. This is the central law. Parliament has to pass it. Well, I don't know what, I can never say what the mood of the parliamentarians is, because nowadays everybody looks for votes. But so far, they have held firm, and there has been no sort of attempt to amend the law and allow animal fights, because it's not just bullfights. There are cockfights, there are bulbul fights, there are dog fights, there are different kinds of fights where animals are pitted against each other. And therefore, it's not a simple thing of saying that we will allow this practice because it is customary. Every state will claim it is customary. Every little town and village will say that this is our custom, where we put animals to fight. Therefore, I don't see the act being amended, but I do wish that a new act would be brought into force with stringent penalties. Government was aiming at 1 lakh as a penalty. You get one of those kind of penalties and you'll have a stop to bullfights. Otherwise, it's sort of going on. But we have filed this petition, and one of the things that has happened in the petition is that the government finally called for a workshop between of the police, and they invited the PFA to also as one of the persons who are resource persons for that workshop. And these are some of the suggestions which came from the police, because the police said, yes, we know it is illegal. Yes, we know we have to stop the bullfights, but we have our own difficulties. And I want to tell you what these difficulties are. So what are the difficulties that the police said? And I'm putting it under 3 heads, because this is what we have told the court. This is the police version. The greatest difficulty during an ongoing bullfight is the lack of resources to catch, seize, rescue, and rehabilitate the bull as a case property under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Case and Maintenance of Case Property Animal Rules. Under the Act, there are certain rules that when an act of cruelty is committed, you can seize the animal and it becomes a case property, which it means the police must keep that animal in its custody until the case is disposed of. So it's a case property. So they say that is our biggest problem. The police therefore have requested dedicated professional bull catchers who would be sourced from a cadre of bull attendants available either with the department or with NGOs in jurisdictions with high frequency of bullfights to help seize the bull as a case property during a raid or during a bullfight and arrest them. So the first thing they are saying is give us somebody who can catch these animals, because we sometimes know where the bulls are residing, who are the bull owners who have them, and we can carry out a raid. Because that's why I read to you the provisions of the act. You can raid, you can seizure. These provisions are there. We can go to catch it, but we cannot deal with the animal ourselves. We have no idea how to deal with a big bull. We can deal with a dog, we can deal with small animals, but we don't know. Give us professional people to catch the animals. Secondly, facility to lodge the seized animal. On the few occasions in the past, when the police has seized the bulls involved in a bullfight, there has been no shelter where the animal could be kept, maintained, and looked after. The animal could only be tied under the shade of a tree in the police station compound. As a result, the owner filed a case against the police station of cruelty to animal, and the animal had to be released. It is necessary, therefore, that some infirmary, some animal shelter is there, which the police are informed about, to which the police can take the bulls, where they would receive immediate medical examination and also be cared for. So suppose you seize the bull during a bullfight, it is injured. What does the police do about it? They don't know how to treat the animal. They tied it under the tree. In turn, they got a case filed against them by the owner, who said that my animal is bleeding there, is lying in the sun there, you haven't given it water. The police are scared to go near it. They just throw some water in the vicinity, and so on and so forth. So this is the second thing. They say, give us a place. We'll seize the animal, we'll take it somewhere, then it's not our responsibility. Let that party be responsible for maintaining the animal until the case is disposed of. Third thing they said, prevention of anticipated bullfights. RFID tags for Dhirio bulls. Now, what are they saying? All farm and draft animals fall within the scope of the Animal Husbandry Department. The principal manner in which the department supervises the animals is by tagging each animal with a radio frequency identification tag, RFID tag. But the bulls kept for bullfights are not involved in agricultural activities. And as a result, they are almost never tagged. As the owners are also generally reluctant to have these bullfights, these particular bulls tagged. And as such, tagging of the animals is difficult in the light of aggressive nature of the bulls and the unwillingness of the owners. Hence, a dedicated drive led by the Animal Husbandry Department, and the police will accompany them, would be a way forward to map and tag all the bulls involved in bullfights across Goa. This was one of the strongest recommendations. Why was it? Because when there is a bullfight taking place, at least they can find out from the tag who is the owner of the bull. Otherwise, any small Johnny is put forward as this is the owner. He is nobody, but they pay him some money. They say you are the owner. The real owners hide behind. They don't want their names to come out. You get somebody, he says, yes, I'm the owner. I'll pay penalty. And that is the end of the story. So this was one of the things that they wanted. Let the Dhirio bulls, they call it Dhirio in Konkani, that's why I use that word. Let these bulls be tagged also so we can identify them. Then they also said that this mapping exercise, this RFID tag, should document the trade route of the bulls. Who were they bought from? Who are they sold to? What's the trade route of the bulls? Their life cycle. How long have they lived? Whom have they sired? Which is the offspring of this? Where is that bull going to? So you can trace where the bullfighter bulls are. and relevant information regarding the current and previous owners. The entire mapping exercise must be collated, and the information should be easily available online to enable the police to track the bullfights and hold the owners and the organizers responsible. And finally, of course, they went to penalties, the last suggestion. It is common knowledge that penalty for cruelty to animals under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act is very low and not a deterrent at all in the case of bullfights. Hence, it is advisable that additional charges under sections 428 and 429 of the Indian Penal Code must be added to enhance the punishment of the crime of organizing bullfights. In this regard, a wider sensitization and a training of the police along with the office of the public prosecutor is required. So when you go to court with an offense of bullfights, you also add the Indian Penal Code as an additional and not stick to the small ground only of 10 to 50 rupees fine. So these are the suggestions. They will come up before the court in the next month, December or so, and we will know whether we get something better out of our long struggle to prevent bullfights in Goa. With this, I think I would like to stop because I've given you a bird's eye view, a bull's eye view of the history of bullfights and all the efforts that we have made dedicatedly and diligently over the years to stop this practice. I know that it is prevalent in many other forms in other places, but we have been persistent. We have the law on our side. We have judgments on our side. Technically, nobody can argue with us anymore that bullfights can be allowed unless the law changes. But it's a question really of enforcement. It's also a question of educating society to treat animals in a better way, and that compelling animals to fight, watching animals fight, drawing blood is not good for society, because once you get used to cruelty among animals, you will also find it less difficult to accept it among human beings. And we are concerned with children who also watch bullfights. They go with their fathers and their brothers and they watch. They learn that, well, you get charged up seeing blood flowing. You start getting enamored with the whole thing, and you are soon caught up. And the next time you have a fight with or a difference of opinion with your neighbor, you don't think anything of picking up a knife and doing what you want, because you think blood flows and it's all right. Nothing much happens. So thank you very much for listening, and of course I will answer any question. Thank you for the lovely hand signs that you are giving. I am pleased to see that, and I am glad that the organizers took up this topic. Very topical, because we are still in court in it, and it should come up any day for hearing. So Eddie, now that's over to you.
Thank you so much, Norma. We've got so many positive comments from many people. Thank you, Norma, for the inspiring talk. Thank you so much. Very informative, insightful, and enlightening. So these are all positive comments, Norma. Thank you. Right, so we're actually... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, carry on.
So we're actually running out of time. So I don't think we'll have time to go through all the questions, but let me start with a question from Soha. This question actually had a few endorsements from other participants as well. So Soha asks, I'd like to understand how animal welfare groups should think about the complexities of class in relation to upholding the rights of animals. In Pakistan, for example, people who train monkeys for entertainment have been doing it for generations. It's a family trade, and they belong to a marginalized lower income class. How do we push for alternative sources of income in groups like this, who have no access to education and schools, etc.?
I think the answer lies in the question that is posed. The reason why certain professions happen, like we used to have bear dancing in India, which was widespread. The Madaris, they were called, and their children would be trained, and they made the bears dance, and then you got a few pennies, and things like that. The practice was stopped when a shelter was established for the bears, and these Madaris were all, their children at least, were trained in an alternative occupation. So while the older persons who could not work were given some kind of money to carry on and so on, the younger generation was trained in different alternative occupations. Some of them even went into the shelters to look after the bears, and slowly the practice died. So nowadays you do not see in India, you don't see dancing monkeys, you don't see dancing bears at all, because I think it went to court also and court prohibited it. Maybe monkeys are seen in some remote places, but not as a rule in the towns and cities. One thing that has helped is that the government has compelled education of children, offered free education, and a lot of social workers go around making sure that the young girls and the boys go to schools where the education is free, and more important, where a midday meal is provided. Now, whether the children learn anything in school or not, one doesn't know, but they go at least for the meal, which gives them one nutritious meal a day. And that is the reason why many parents send their children also to school, because at least you'll get some good food during the day. So I think that, yes, people from the lower income groups are continuing these kind of practices, but the answer lies in both. You can't tell them that the animals are, their animal rights, because their rights themselves, they are themselves so poor, they're living on the edge of poverty. The way is to find a kind of alternative occupation, or if one sets up a shelter for those animals, to perhaps try and engage them and give them some kind of employment. That's all that I can think of right now.
Thank you so much, Norma. Would you be okay to stay a few minutes longer than we originally planned? Thank you very much. We've got many questions. So let's move on to the next question from Pin from Taiwan. So I know that Goa is a popular travel destination for Westerners. Do they also participate in the events, or is there actually a lot of international attention and pressure because of this?
The tourists do not really participate in bullfights. In fact, that was one of the arguments of the Bull Owners Association, that Goa is a tourism place, and so this will attract tourists. But we showed that tourists do not come to Goa for bullfights. Bullfights is not advertised by Goa government as an incentive to come to Goa, like perhaps the Spanish bullfights are. So tourism has nothing to do. It does not motivate bullfights. On the contrary, we have said that if tourists know that this is the way we are treating the animals, many tourists are sensitive to these issues, it will be a negative point for tourism in Goa. Court accepted that argument. Bullfights are patronized by young, poorly educated young men, the macho type, who go to movies where King Kong is fighting XYZ, and that kind of movies. So they are very, very lower class people. You do not find educated people participating or watching bullfights. But young guys on their motorbikes, on their cycles, with nothing to do, no job, no employment, they generally watch, and there are a lot of them.
Thank you very much, Norma. Next question from George. So as an enforcement tactic, if gambling addiction is a recognized social problem, do you think bullfighting could also be challenged from a social welfare perspective, the need to address social problems related to this form of addiction?
See, the issue of gambling and betting was very much part of the challenge when we filed against bullfights, in the sense that we brought out the large amounts of money involved in betting. We also showed that by themselves, by itself, bullfights on a smaller scale as they were organized, they used to be organized earlier, were, I can't say less cruel to the animals, because the cruelty is there in the organizing of the fight. But when you have a large arena of people and the stakes are high, the bull owners know that they have to deliver a performance to the crowd. Otherwise, no one's coming for their shows. So it becomes it's a gambling and the betting which motivates the excessive cruelty on the bulls, in the sense that people feel happy that they have invested they've gambled, they've invested their money, and they've seen a show where the organizer is goaded the bull, refused to let him run away, made him fight to the finish, go ahead. And if they see that kind of thing, then they get satisfied with the show. So the next time those particular bulls are involved, or those bull owners are involved, people say, you go for that. You'll really get a performance. What fun it is to watch, and it's really great. So the gambling and betting which really keeps the bullfights going. Otherwise, they would have happened now and then. They wouldn't happen regularly as they did in the last 1 year, where on one day, I have not read you from our petition, there was a birthday of a politician. He organized 8 bullfights to celebrate his birthday. That was the August 14th. 8 bullfights were organized by a politician to celebrate his birthday. We filed the petition shortly after that, saying if this is where we have reached, then obviously the court's orders mean little or nothing. So gambling and betting was taken up as the cause. I don't think we have to go to the court again. Now it's simply a question of turning society around and arresting a few people or doing something which, puts the fear of law into them. I must tell you that since we have filed the petition, the whole bullfight scenario has gone down, which means the police have told them better not hold it right now. So there are no reports in the papers, no sites, nothing is coming out. And I know that they are not being organized. But for how long? Once the court disposes of the petition, then slowly they start again. That's the problem.
Thank you so much, Norma, for elaborating on that. All there tomorrow. And thank you again, Norma. Let's give her a final round of jazz hands. Thank you so much, Norma.